episode 79. Today we have John Overall from WP Plugins A to Z as a special guest. So I take a wild gander that we're going to be talking about plugins today. Is that right, Jonathan?
Yeah, where's the music, Bill? I want my music.
Yeah, I'll get that music next time. My iPad.
My music, Bill. I don't get in the mood.
It'll be there when you listen to it on iTunes. Want to turn your WordPress website into an online speed machine? Go on over to WP-Tonic. They'll set up DigitalOcean websites hosting on solid-state drives. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for WP-Tonic's maintenance packages. WP-Tonic offers some of the very best WordPress maintenance packages on the market. So those who are serious about getting the very best platform for their WordPress sites, make sure you go on over to WP-Tonic.com.
All right, then. Hopefully some other of our great panel will be joining us. Go on, Sally, introduce yourself.
Certainly. My name is Sally Getch. I'm the organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California. And my business is WP Fangirl at WPFangirl.com.
I love that title. That's fantastic, actually, Fangirl. Go on, John, our beloved guest, introduce yourself.
I'm John Overall from WP Plugins A to Z. I live in Victoria. I'm quite active here in the Victoria WordPress community. I still run the occasional meetup. I'm still partly member with the local meetup group here. I've spoke at the Victoria WordCamp for all 4 years that it ran, and I wish they would bring it back, but we just need a crew to do that for us.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame. Well, we can introduce the intellectual of the panel, Dave. Introduce yourself, David.
Intellectual. I can't get my little thing to appear on the bottom of my screen. Anyway, my name is David Laeta. I'm the organizer of WordPress Orlando, as well as WordCamp Orlando for the past few more years. I build plugins, so I'm excited for this talk.
Yeah. God, yeah, I'm sure you are. You're salivating. So obviously, John, you're the king of plugins, so we've got to discuss plugins. Really, I know it's a bit boring, but we got.
Oh yeah, it's so boring. That's what's made WordPress so great. Is all the plugins, though.
It certainly is. So, give us a couple that you really love. Give us a couple.
Well, the couple that I really love, ones I use Anti-Spam Bee as my anti-spam plugin to prevent spam from getting into my system. Another one that I use quite regularly is WordFence. I use that for security, although depending on some server hosts, it becomes minorly problematic because it does use a few resources.
A few,
but it depends on the hosting provider. And the other one is Gravity Forms. Gravity Forms is my #1 form plugin that gets installed on virtually every site I build.
Yeah, they sound great. I use iTheme security, and most of the people that I've dealt with don't have forums because they can't. They find it a struggle to put anything new on, let alone administrate any comments or anything. But there we go. It's quite, Dave. Any plugins that really warm your heart? Anything that you've come across recently that's taken your eye, Dave?
I also use iThemes. I use Backup Buddy, iTheme Security, and Sync for my sites. I do still use Akismet for a lot of sites, and I use Gravity Forms on pretty much every site I make, and then of course the other ones have to do with what the site's about.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, what they want. What about you, Sally? Got anything that comes to mind?
Yes, there are lots of them. I'm also a Gravity Forms user. I think that what Ninja Forms is doing sounds really interesting, but Gravity Forms is a much better bang for your buck if you want their all-in developer license. And so far, I haven't had any complaints about it. I use Anti-Spam by WebVitali for blocking spam on all sites where I am not forced to use Akismet. I'm a big Backup Buddy fan for both backup and migration. I also have been doing a lot of work lately with Advanced Custom Fields Pro for sites that need extra fields added into various places. And I've recently been using WP Rocket which is nice because unlike some caching plugins, there's pretty much nothing you have to configure, and also it will talk to Cloudflare for you.
Yes.
Well, yeah. What does it say to Cloudflare? What kind of language is it coding?
Yeah, well, it says things like, switch into developer mode now. Clear the Cloudflare cache.
Oh, very nice. Does it say it in French?
I don't know. I think it says it in API.
Mine doesn't. I use Zencache Pro. You got a kind of its own setup, which works perfectly, or you got masses of adjustments that you can spend the whole afternoon and bill your client for. That's not bad, is it, Sally?
As long as your client is willing to be billed for that kind of thing.
Yeah, they ask for it, so they get what they...
Right. And then the other thing I use an awful lot is rich text excerpts, which lets you put formatted content in your excerpts, because a lot of the sites that I build show excerpts from either posts or pages or something else on, in a magazine layout on another part of the site.
Okay. Well, John, you got any plugin suggestions that deal with our archive and category, like the category template? Anything that come to mind that deals with that? Because I always feel I've never come across, you always got to go and do some hand coding and really sort it out, because I've never found any kind of plugin solutions that were any good for that. Anything comes to mind?
No, unfortunately not. Not for dealing with the archiving and templating. Nothing's jumping into my head at the moment.
God,
give me time. I may actually get something here.
What about you, David? I suppose you just go in and code it up, don't you?
Generally, yeah. I can't think of specific plugins that handle those archives that I use.
Yeah, they're dog horrible, aren't they? You got to do something with it if it's necessary. I always end up having to code them up, because they're such gruesome. We've got another guest, but she's not showing her face, our beloved Kim. Are you there, Kim? No, silence as well. She needs to refresh herself. So, Dave, you've built a few plugins. So what got any tips or tricks and things that come to mind that you've learned from your plugin building? And have you actually published anything to the public? The public side of WordPress?
I have two that are on the repo right now. One of them, they were both things that I built for client sites a few years ago, and I just kind of keep them updated, but not really loved, I will say. One of them, a Flickr importer, just was very basic. It was, I think, one of my, I think probably the first plugin I wrote. And the other one is a bit more popular. It's a slider, and how much I rail against sliders now. It's a bit funny, but it still has quite a few active installs, so I, at the very least, keep running. Kim's here.
Yeah. Hello, Kim.
Hi.
Hello.
And they've been slowly getting more complex from there. The one I'm working on right now for a personal site integrates with a lot of different APIs. I am trying to get the hang of OAuth right now, so it's a lot of fun. But that said, keeping it simple is probably the way I would start, because even though I'm building something that's overly complex that no one is ever going to use on their site, that isn't me building it for myself, my favorite kind of plugins are the ones that do one task really well and are very good.
You're talking about Jetpack, David.
So
you're talking about Jetpack, mate. Are you talking about that, are you?
So Jetpack has some limitations, but it has a lot of things that it actually does really well too. But one of the different modules in there could be an example of what I'm referring to, and I'm not referring to specifically that it doesn't try to handle everything under the sun, because yes, Jetpack does do that from time to time, but that it can be very modular. It can be very they follow practices of, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this, practice of exclusion very well, where I don't have it changing how things work with other plugins. Like, there's a Twitter plugin that one of my clients had on their site, that was causing the admin dashboard to look really funky. I realized that it was just a style sheet that was loading that whoever wrote the plugin just put important on every single thing, and it loaded on the admin, even though it was a Twitter feed.
Me, Dave, I'm sorry.
So somebody forgot that if it's not admin.
I would never do that, Dave. I would never do that.
So,
with time pressure, they're old important, you know. Yeah.
But really, best takeaway for me is doing one thing and doing that thing well. And by doing it well, I really mean not messing with what other things are doing.
Oh yes, it's very true. We have to go back and talk some more about your development experiences. I just want to introduce Kim, our beloved Kim, to the audience. So, Kim, got any to start off? Got any favourite plugins that you just have to put on site as soon as you get your hands on them?
For me?
Yes.
Well, I have 4 basics that I have to have. And by the way, I love David. I know him from WordCamp Orlando and from the user group over there. He's awesome. Love you, David.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a few basics. First of all, I have to have what used to be better WP Security, which is now owned by iThemes. You got to have a good backup plugin. Even if I'm backing it up at the host, which I really do think backups should be at the server level, there is something so beautiful about having that basic plugin where when a theme messes up or a database messes up, you click the one button and it goes right back, right back to where you were. I then like 2 of the visual editor plugins because most of my students are not highly technical. Stop that, Jonathan. Most of my students aren't highly technical, so they want a visual editor. They want to be able to add the look, if I give them...
You mean, Kim, they want to fool themselves they're actually a designer?
Huh?
They actually want to kid themselves as a designer.
No, they want to be able to add a blog post and make the font the right size without making it a freaking... what happens is if you don't put in a visual...
I'm only stirring you, Kim. I was only trying to stir.
Then they can't, instead of, I want them to be able to make the font size they want without just making it an H2 or an H1 because that's how the CSS makes the sites bigger, and that's not what I want. I don't want to go look at their page and there's 40 H1s because that's the only CSS style for a larger font.
Yeah,
so
but you got tiny
to be able to set their font sizes. That's it.
Yeah, but you got Tiny MCE Advanced for that. You don't have to put a...
No, that is the plugin I use. That's what I'm talking about. No, that's what I'm talking about. That's my number 1 plugin because I want my students to be able to set their font sizes and everything without doing the stupid shit.
I get told off for putting that on. I got told off by somebody recently. He's supposed to slow down. I suggested that they just got better hosting. That went down well. But there we go. It's the English sarcasm. As though, Sally, got any experiences of actually making any plugins or get them into the public repertory?
I've never tried to put anything into the repository. Pretty much all the plugins I've done so far are just functionality plugins to do things like add custom post types and custom taxonomies.
Yeah, right then, John. So you're the king of the plugins, and you get bombarded by all these developers that want you to talk great about their plugin. So, got any tips if somebody's got the next great plugin? How do they get it onto your show and get you to say nice things about them? How many get the full dragon treatment?
Well, if you want all that, send me lots of money. No, just kidding. There's no guarantee. Any developer who wants to get their plugin reviewed by us, all they got to do is go to WP-Plugins.com, and we have a link there where the developers can submit their plugin to us. And if it's a premium plugin, they can submit a key with it for us and the file, so we don't have to try and go chase it down and buy it. But we don't guarantee a high rating. We'll rate it. If it's really piss poor, we might not put it on the air just to save them the embarrassment and give them some pointers and say, hey, go do something, come back and talk to us. But, on average, the vast majority of the plugins that we review get a 3 to 4 rating between myself and Marcus. For someone to get a 5-star or a 5-dragon rating on the WP Plugins A to Z show, they got to knock it out of the park. That plugin has to hit all the bases. It has to be easy, simple, fast, very few problems. It doesn't matter if it's a third-party service or not.
It sounds like It sounds like my last girlfriend.
Yeah, it's just got. Yeah, there you go. It's just got to be. It's just got to be good. And if you listen back to our show through the last 242 episodes, you'll find that it's not often you hear 5-dragon rated plugins. You know, they're usually 3 or 4 with a few 2s and 1s tossed in. Here and there.
I love that music for the dragon. Did you find that music for the dragon, the 5-star dragon music?
Actually, Marcus found that somewhere. That little roar.
Yeah, the roar is just a childish thing, but
it's a childish roar. We started that somewhere around episode 60 in the show.
It must please the developers to actually hear the roar, because they tend to have a certain childish element. Don't they?
Oh yeah, everyone wants to get it, so it's actually funny.
Oh well, that's good. I'm going off school.
Listeners enjoy it. They always get a kick out of it.
Now, to go on another side, you've been interviewed recently by some very experienced podcasters, and they've asked you. You've said about things have changed. When you started, there was about 6,000 plugins, and now there's over 40,000 plus. You got any tips or suggestions of how people should find the plugin that they really need and make the right choice? Got any kind of tips and tricks?
It's gotten harder and harder to find the right one. Even myself, when I have to go find something new, I sometimes have to go through 2 or 3 different plugins to find one that works. The best thing to do is refine what you're looking for, narrow it down via the keywords. When you're searching, if you're searching for free, which most people are starting free in the repository, and there you will find it's not just free anymore, it's also a lot of the repository now has the freemium plugin, which I've been talking about for some time. And that freemium plugin, what they need to do is you need to get the plugin, find what you're looking for, and just test it, basically. Test it to see if it does what you need it to do. Load it up. Don't load it up on your live site, because you could end up with a live site that looks like mine with 80 plugins installed and activated. Load it up on your development site, where you can load up as many plugins as possible. But when you're doing your development site also, the biggest thing that occurs with users, and they forget, is that plugins interact with each other. And they'll install one plugin to solve a problem, but they'll already have a plugin running, and they'll break that plugin, not realizing that they broke it until they try to use their site and do whatever functionality was there. And this is what has to happen when you're testing plugins. You load up a plugin, you have to go test your other functionality to make sure it all still works before you can move on. And a lot of people will take 10, 15 plugins, go at them, turn them all on at once, and wonder why their website doesn't work.
It keeps me busy, John. I rely on that sort of madness.
Brings in a lot of income for me too. I'm not going to deny it. I get a lot of money from helping people solve those problems.
I rely on that type of madness all the time. So, David, have you got any insights for people that are looking for that plugin, how to find it and how to assess it, David? Got any tips?
I have tips for both sides. People who want to get started building those plugins, but also finding the right ones. Most everyone is going to start in the WordPress repo. Everyone who's already familiar with WordPress is going to start with the WordPress repo. People who aren't are going to Google it, and there's a really good chance that they're going to find something either in the repo or on Code Canyon, just because, like ThemeForest, they have a pretty big Google presence. If you are looking in the repo, there's a few things that I look at. They no longer have the download. Now they work with active installs, but I look at active installs. I look at the version that it's compatible up to, when it was last updated, and ratings. So a rating you think would be the quickest way to determine if a plugin is good or not, but that can be very misleading. For instance, I haven't actually looked at Yoast since they've done their most recent update, but knowing that they've done like 5 in the past month, I'm betting that their recent ratings have plummeted. Maybe not plummeted, but have had some issues that might not be representative of how the plugin works as a whole. But I can look to see, 1 million plus installs updated last week, compatible to the latest version, knowing that there's active support forums that people are responding to those support questions. So the authors have not abandoned it. It is kind of hard for me to make time to manage this while it's something that's absolutely free out there, and I have work and life. But if I want anyone to trust what I'm doing, that's what I have to do as a plugin author.
Yeah, it's a balance, isn't it, Dave? Obviously, they can't expect kind of commercial standard of support, but on the other hand, if you're not going to offer any, maybe you should just redraw the plugin or find somebody that can take it over or something. What do you think I'm right about that?
There are so many plugins that handle the same tasks, and you might already have solved a problem, but it might not be the best solution. So I picked on Twitter, a Twitter widget earlier, and yesterday I looked at a completely separate site running a completely separate Twitter widget. One of my friends, he sent me a link to a site, and he said, "Hey, my site's broken. Can you look at it?" And I'm scrolling down, and I see there's a box where he had a Twitter feed, and it had PHP error, fatal error, blah blah blah. And I go and look, and it's this Twitter plugin, and there was an error saying that they'd run out of memory. So he was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I can just go have them bump up my PHP memory limit." And I said, "Well, there's literally hundreds of Twitter widgets. Why don't you go find another one? Because yes, you kind of you covered up the problem by increasing the memory limit, but that doesn't really fix the problem in why a Twitter widget is using up so much of your server's memory."
Yes, that's good. That's a good point. Hey, Sally, some of my worst experiences have been with social media plugins and widget. David's mate put me in a cold sweat now. He's brought back some really great memories. What was your experience with social media plugins, Sally?
Well, one thing you have to watch out for is the let us add every single possible sharing button to your site and
of course you got to do that, Sally.
Slow it down horrendously because it's all communicating with that. So I try to keep sharing buttons minimal.
But what about those two people using Delicious and Stumble Upon?
You can't exclude them. It's
you're right. The thing is that not having a button for those things will not stop people from saving things.
Are you sure, Sally? Are you sure?
Oh, yes, I'm quite sure. And there are various arguments that depending on the nature of your sharing buttons, you might actually be deterring people from using them.
What does the cat think of that?
The cat thinks...
I can hear it. Does he want to join as a panelist?
No, that's not the cat you hear. The cat is being perfectly quiet. Somebody's dog is whining.
Who's kicking their dog? This is what I want to know. Oh, I know who it is. It's my co-host, Bill. Is that your crazy Labrador, Bill?
No, there's no dog barking here.
All right, fair enough. All right, sorry, Sally. I intervened.
Yeah, and then there's just, it was a really annoying day for everyone when Twitter decided to, make you have to go and get a special, create an app and get a special this and a that just to show your darn tweets on your website. Right. And, half of the Twitter widgets in existence stopped working overnight.
Anything else? Or is that it, Sally?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
If I could, I have a couple questions, Jonathan.
Yeah, go on. Go for it, Kim.
Well, first, I would just like to say on the social sharing apps, I had a client install one of the Facebook sharing apps at one point, and I don't know where he got it, but it turned all of the comments and Facebook stuff into Italian. Oops. It was really interesting troubleshooting.
Sounds excellent to me, Kim.
Yeah, well, I don't read Italian, and they're like, why is this Italian? I'm like, I don't know. And then I went in and they plugged in something they shouldn't have. But for those of you guys who really know, we were talking a little bit about the plugin repository, and all of us search for plugins and install plugins and use plugins. What causes a plugin to be removed from the directory? I had a lot of people request one of my reviews on a plugin. I had downloaded it, I was reviewing it, and before I went to post it, it had been removed from the directory. And I was just wondering what caused that.
Oh, the biggest thing is if there's some kind of, because if it's been posted in the first place, it's presumably passed
Right.
a little bit of an example.
Or comment.
But if there's a, but somebody may report it for, this plugin is being spammy and how it's trying to, sell me stuff, and there have been, I've seen some discussions about this among the people who monitor plugins, and so it's often the sort of advertising and whether or not you can turn that off or shut it up, or phoning home kinds of things that are issues for plugins where they just take them out. And then I think the only other thing would be if they found malware that they couldn't fix.
Well, that's what I thought. What about you, David? I heard that really it's more security consideration that get you banned pretty quick if they find there's a backdoor or something like that.
Well, I mean, my understanding is that they reach out to all plugin authors before they take any action, or rather, they reach out to plugin authors if they take any action, maybe not before. The plugin team for the repository is all volunteers. It's led by Mika Epstein from DreamHost and Pippin Williamson of Pippin's Plugins. And then they have some other people who work with them, but it is, it's very much a volunteer effort. It's very much when people have time to review, which is why sometimes they can take a while, and it's a hard community. It's hard to set that standard of we want everyone's voice to be heard, but at the same time, this is a place that demands some level of respect. I linked the plugin guidelines on WordPress.org, and specifically near the very end, I think. Let me take a look. Actually, okay, I thought they had one. I had some. They had another rule here, but must have been taken out. But the very last one specifically says, we reserve the right to arbitrarily disable or remove any plugins for any reason whatsoever. This is our repository. We will attempt to maintain a standard of conduct, code quality, blah, blah, blah. What they're really saying there is that it's not quite as it's not quite as a free-for-all that you can just put whatever you want, but it's not as hardcore as, say, like trying to get an iPad app approved.
Well, some people, I don't know, I like your insight in this. Some people said the actual, if you put a theme in, it's actually it's actually harder to get a theme accepted in some ways, the actual process, than the plugin. What's your experience with that, and would you agree with that?
Well, plugins, they run. I mean, both themes and plugins run through a lot of tests. There are actually theme test and plugin test plugins that you can install on your site while you're developing the plugin. So at the very minimum, if you want your plugin or theme to get onto the repository, it has to pass all the tests. They're automated tests that one runs. If it doesn't pass that, they have a quick way to kick it back to you and say, fix these. With that said, I would imagine the only reason the theme might be harder is the theme team is also very stretched for resources, and it's probably a lot more subjective.
Yes, yeah. I can, so go on to John. So, John, in my experience with clients, it is social media widgets and plugins that they go potty with, and after the 20th install of something from Russia, something nasty happens. Is that your experience? Some of my worst experiences have been around JavaScript-based kind of social media type plugins. What's your feelings, and how do you find? Got any good ones that you could recommend our viewers that haven't caused you any kind of stress?
And social media plugins being the ones that display the stuff in the widgets. Is that what you're after?
Well, all of it. They
Okay.
a lot of them tend to come multi-featured, don't they?
Well, they do. What I've started doing, because the plugins have become so problematic for the most part, I've simplified a lot of what I do. It's like I used to use plugins to deal with the Facebook box and like box. I quit doing that. I just started going to Facebook and getting the code and pasting it in as a text block. It comes in much smoother and faster. It takes a little bit longer to prep, but hey, it helps the site load as fast as it can if you're going to load that stuff up there. For the sharing buttons, I started using simple shares widget. What's the widget's name again here? Simple share button adder, because it's very simplified in what it does. I'd gone through a problematic where I was using Shareaholic and several other ones, and they started to become problematic in how they were misusing the callback features and the ability to inject stuff into your site without your permission. And this is some of the problems faced with plugins and how plugin authors will abuse the trust that they gain sometimes. And it might not even be the original author. Usually what happens is the author sells the plugin to somebody who takes it over and goes, hey, I got an opportunity here to make a fast buck. And they do that. They make the fast buck and in the process kill that plugin's reputation. So social media, a lot of times now I'm going to the simpler methods of direct coding in things like buttons to simplify and speed up the load times of websites. Yes. Since load times have become so important, and that's one of the big things.
Well, the calls they make, they're making multiple calls. They build up, don't they? What about you, Sally? What's your experience of social? Is it anything?
I haven't had a lot of real disasters around that, but I do try to keep it simple. I prefer the social profile widgets that use icon fonts to pictures, just because it's sharper, and to keep the sharing buttons, if any, as simple as possible. But it isn't. There's a lot of my clients don't tend to install their own plugins so much. They just are, they kind of don't know where to begin. So I've run into more issues where, they've bought some god-awful thing from ThemeForest that had half a dozen plugins bundled into it, and then they have no way to update those bundled plugins, and then there's a security leak, and then it gets really ugly.
Yeah, that sounds great. I was going to ask you, David, obviously I've had a few guests on talking about the RESTless API, JavaScript. In the next year, do you think the kind of rise of JavaScript is also going to change dramatically how plugins are developed in any shape or form, or are they always going to be, for the foreseeable future, based on PHP?
So this is actually one of the things that makes me most nervous. And first I have to say, Sally, I wish I had clients like yours, because I will develop something for a client, come back a few months later, and they've ruined my perfection with some terrible plugin.
Oh, no, mine managed to ruin it with crazy content and with, but a lot of them, a lot of them never touch their site after I build it, even to do things that ought to be done.
But my concern with the rise of JavaScript, the rise of the REST API, and the many different ways people can develop for that is that there's going to be a point that it's going to be great for some businesses. New businesses will be able to be formed around this, but there's going to be balkanization of the plugins and themes that are out there. By that I mean, if I'm building a site that is specifically a presentational layer, as it should be, the theme, as it should be, that uses React, that's great. And then, I need to install a form on my site, let's say, and Gravity Forms isn't going to work at all. It's not going to show up because it's not functioning with that theme at all. So somebody is going to, write a plugin that is a great form plugin for React. And then the same guy who's like, great, I have a JavaScript theme, but it's written in Angular. Nope, no dice. So I'm sure there's a lot of really, really talented people in our community who are going to solve this problem, but until they solve it, a lot of new little businesses are going to rise, and most of them are going to fall, and lots of people are going to be really sad.
Yeah, that were my faults. I was thinking that it's great in one way, but I think there's ways to handle that could make it a bit, stop what you've just stated from happening. But if nothing's really done, that I totally agree with you. I see that as the road. What do you reckon, John? Have you been thinking about how all this new JavaScript world, how it's going to affect the world of plugins at all?
I've only given it peripheral thought because I don't actually write code from scratch, but I hire people to do that for me. The person that does most of my work, she's just finishing up coding school, and she's digging deeply into the JavaScript and is now getting excited about developing me themes and plugins.
She's starting to salivate, is she?
She's starting to salivate at it. Yes. So that's what happens. Is like I can see the potential and I can understand Dave's idea there about the balkanization of it, because if you've got multiple languages being used, you start to have problems with communication. I mean, that's one of the beauties of WordPress being PHP. It's one basic language, and so everyone was able to write stuff that always fit together, even if it didn't fit perfectly or one item stepped on the other, it still sort of fit, and you could go in and tweak and fix it. But with the new ways it's going to be changing, it's going to be kind of hard to say. It's going to kind of like putting Apple and Microsoft together and trying to make them work.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Kim? What do you reckon about this? You've got nothing to say, have you?
I really don't. It's still up in the air to me, honestly. It's just I'm still fleshing it out. I have no real depth on that yet.
Well, it never stops me from talking about something, Kim.
Quick question for John. Did you mean that your coder was going through code school or a coding school?
Well, I code. To me, it's code. She's finishing up coding. She's been doing training. She's been doing development for me in just basic WordPress theme and other things, CSS and stuff. But last year she decided to go back to college and get an education in Java, and I forget, she's learned several languages so far. But right now she's in the middle of Java.
I thought maybe you meant Code School, codeschool.com, and I was totally going to put an unasked for plugin. They sponsor our meetup. They sponsor our plugins. They're based in Orlando. They're awesome, and it is. And I swear they're not paying me for this or anything. Yeah. But if you do,
Dave. You are allowed to plug stuff, Dave.
Well, right. What I mean is, I'm plugging it as a customer, not as somebody who's getting in any way paid by them. They do have. If you are looking to start developing, they actually do have a pretty good system in place. They have a lot of JavaScript frameworks, things for them. Excuse me. So if you're looking to get into JavaScript development, good place to start.
Yeah. I'd just like to point people, anybody that comes on this show, you're most welcome to plug anything, as long as you don't continuously do it and try and take over the whole show. I will have to put my foot down. But you are allowed to plug stuff to some, as long as you do it reasonably subtly.
Well, so if they see this, they should pay me. So
yeah, okay, there you go. Well, Treehouse have got an opening, but I don't think they're into WordPress now anyway, are they?
Apparently not.
Yeah, no, they're also out of Orlando, and they got rid of their WordPress instructors around WordCamp US.
Yeah, I interviewed him last week, me and my co-host. Great guy.
That's wonderful.
It must be nice to be told that your salary is going to go to a .NET instructor, isn't it?
Zach is the kind of guy that if he didn't already have something else lined up, which he does, and I'm excited for, he would bounce right back. As with the other teachers, they already have other things lined up, but it is sad to see the change here.
He is the pure Zen master, isn't he? He literally is a Zen master, isn't he?
Very much.
Yes. All right. So, Sally, what do you reckon about all this? Because I think the JavaScript route has some great possibilities, but I think this is the main worry in the community, that you're going to end up with all these type of micro plugins that don't really communicate. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's themes based on JavaScript are one thing. Plugins, that could get a little difficult, and I don't know enough about JavaScript to really begin to understand how you would build a WordPress plugin in JavaScript, because at this point what actually powers WordPress is still PHP. So, I don't know about it, but yes, the fact that there are so many flavors of JavaScript makes it an even more problematic consideration.
Oh, there's a new JavaScript library produced every day, literally, if you look on the internet, I think. It's obsession with full-stack developers. One must make one's own library to become famous. I'm sorry. So, John, my beloved John.
Put me on the hot seat.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned this. You got this model where you've got a lot of plugins that are free, but a lot of them are totally crippled, and you literally can't do anything with them unless you buy. And there must be but I get so annoyed installing a plugin, and it just doesn't do anything. And I understand they want to market and they want to get their name out, but it drives me potty. What's your feelings about this?
Well, you actually got something of interest. I started talking about the rise of the freemium plugin, much like the rise of the paid themes that occurred several years ago. The freemium plugin started rising up about 2.5 years ago, and I started talking about it on my show because at that time, almost all plugins were free. And I said, this can't go on. Developers need to make money. Nobody ever donates to the developer. The developers abandon plugins. They got to find a way to make money. And so what they need to do is create a test version of the plugin that people can download, have maybe 25 to 50% of the functionality available so that the person can test out to see if it's going to work, and then charge a fee to access the rest of it. And that's what's occurred. And for the most part, the vast majority of the freemium plugins that I download and test do this very well. There are a few that cripple it down to where less than 25% of the plugin is usable. And if that happens, it makes it impossible to test it. They need to at least allow 25 to 50% of the plugin functionality before someone can decide that they will actually pay whatever price between, I pay for as little as $10 for plugins and as high as $250 for a plugin, depending on what I'm testing. And the problem with software is people don't want to buy the software without having to be able to test it first in some way. Because once you buy it, you own it. You can't return it. There's very few developers that offer a return policy because, face it, if someone returns it, they have no way to guarantee that the person's going to destroy the license they've been given. So this is what's happening, but I see it as a good thing. I see it as a great thing. It's one of the things that's allowed the plugin community to thrive to what it is now and become more profitable. The one thing that I see is coming in it is consolidation. And consolidation of the same way theme shops have consolidated. And theme shops start producing more and more themes. You're going to see this with plugin authors. They're going to consolidate together. Guys that have produced several plugins are going to start working with another one that's produced several plugins. They're going to consolidate them under one roof to bring down their expenses and maximize their profits. And that I can see coming down the pike, probably in a couple, 3, 4 years, much the same way the themes develop. It's kind of interesting if you look at how the themes developed in the early years and how they are now. Plugins hit that place about 2 to 3 years later than themes did because people didn't give as much credence to plugins, while I saw plugins as the holy grail of WordPress. What WordPress provides in plugins, I was trying to do back in 1999 and 2000 by doing PHP calls all over the place and bringing in several different programs. So WordPress has just changed that game. So this is what's going to happen with it.
Yeah, I see your point of view, Sally. Obviously, a developer, those that develop plugins, for them to keep on developing, got to make a living.
They got to make a living.
But also, Sally, there's nothing frustrating when you get a plugin and it literally almost does nothing apart from install itself and ask you to upgrade. Do you think
Well, I think that's a problem, and I think if you reported that to the plugin team, they would get on the case of of the developer, because and it also, sometimes the plugin description is confusing, so you see features described that are actually only available in the premium plugin without it being clear that you have to pay to get those things to work. So you'll install it thinking it will do X. It turns out it doesn't do X unless you pay for it. That's annoying. And deceptive, whether intentionally or not, deceptive descriptions like that are just going to make people annoyed. They're not going to make you more money. And likewise, if you offer a free plugin, it has to do enough to stand on its own. It can't be incomplete unless you pay for it. Putting limitations on it is fine. I have no problem with paying for plugins, but as John was saying, the free version has to have enough in it to convince you that it's a good enough plugin that that it would be worth spending the money to get the extra features.
Yeah, I'd like to put this to you, David. I think one of the ways around this is, and also one of the best people is Pippin Williams, and because he seems to offer a lot of functionality free, and then he produces himself, or he gets third parties to produce a series of micro plugins that you have to buy. Some are free, some you buy for specific requirements that the main plugin doesn't do. Do you think that's a good model, David?
I do think it's a good model. I think that's why a lot of other companies are taking that on. There's a few things that I like about that model. One, please check Pippin's Plugins did do their 2015 transparency report recently, and they mentioned the amount of money that they paid out in commissions. That is, people who've built those third-party plugins who are making sales. So myself, as somebody who did not write, Easy Digital Downloads or WooCommerce or whatever big-name plugin, but having the ability to write something useful around that plugin and having the marketing, the marketing forces behind that team, that's really huge. So I might be able to sell the Easy Digital Downloads PayPal integrator on my website, but no one's going to see it. But having them give their stamp of approval and handle all of that for me means that I'm going to make many more sales in the long term. Additionally, you get the ability to, as Pippin did, find people who will become future employees who are already invested in your plugin ecosystem, and you get to have a variety of voices. An example is, I'm pointing at Easy Digital Downloads again, but I think WooCommerce as well. They have dozens of payment gateways that you can purchase as extensions. I'm betting that Pippin himself has probably used 2 of these, maybe. There are some that just don't even, they don't exist in America. But he would never have thought to build them because he didn't see the need. But somebody in India who uses an India-only payment system does need that and was able to provide it for other people. So they're able to reach a wider audience and help the people who are building those tools.
Yeah, they're great points, David. I'm just going to I'm going to put this to Kim. So ready yourself, Kim. I'm the devil's advocate here. So I agree with a lot what David has just said, but I also know a lot of people that were using WooCommerce. They bought WooCommerce and then they had to buy a number of what I call micro plugins to get what they felt was core functionality. And then they came back to me and they said they felt they were being slightly ripped off. I didn't really agree with that. I felt that they were still getting a bargain, but there was that feeling. Do you think that was right, or do you think that was totally wrong, or is there some kind of middle road?
I think, and I don't do client work anymore, but when I did WooCommerce for people. I still think it's a great deal. It's just a matter of positioning it to the client. WooCommerce itself is free. But the extensions, what they call extensions, if you want Stripe or all these other things, like I have one client who is now paying $500 a year for, former client, for all of her extensions based on what she has for. She wants email, she wants it to go into her email list. She wants different payment processors, etc. She wants the UPS, shipping, etc. But still, you compare that to a lot of other quote premium Shopify or whatever you want to call it that's going to be $200 or $300 a month. It's still a really good deal, and it's a fair price. WooCommerce doesn't lie about what they're giving you with the basis, and then if you want these other things, this is what you have to pay for it. Personally, I think their subscription extension is too expensive based on all their other extensions, but other than that, I don't think the structure is so bad. I see a thing for premium or a freemium structure, which I guess we could call WooCommerce freemium in the sense of you have the basic plugin and then you have the extensions. So I think that that's fair. I actually had a question for John, and it just left my head. So I will, come back to it.
We're getting to the end of the show, but I'd like task Dave, not Dave, John, sorry. John, what do you think about this kind of I call them some extensions, or what I call them micro plugins? What's your feeling around that and around WooCommerce?
Okay, well, I think it's a good model. It does work. I personally thought WooCommerce took it to the nth degree because they did take a couple things that probably should have been in the core plugin and put them as premium pieces. But that's just my own viewpoint on it. Lots of other people see it's fine. Again, yeah, it's well worth it with the price you pay for the WooCommerce ones as compared to other e-commerce solutions out there on the internet. The microtransaction, I do it with a lot of plugins that I buy. I have one called Connections that we use for building directories for clients, and you get the core product free, but then you have to add in the specific pieces you need. But they've got them priced at a price point of between $10 and $25 per add-on, versus I think WooCommerce's lowest price point is $59. Theirs is always pretty high for almost everything they charge. And even their renewal process. I mean, I was a member of WooCommerce. I've still got some grandfathered licenses that are lifetime because I bought a lot of licenses lifetime, and when they changed it, I was one of the people in the uproar. What, you're going to screw me over now that I've had it? But so at any rate, that's an aside, but still, that's the sort of thing that happens. And I understand their pricing model has to work for them to stay in business. And it's all about the price point that works. But the thing is, when you manage to reach the market saturation that they reached, they don't have to stress it too much.
No, that's great. Well, I think we're coming to the end of the show, and I think we covered a lot of good points. I'd just like to give the panelists opportunity to how people can get a hold of them or anything they quickly want to plug. And I always start with ladies and then David and then finally our guest. So I think I'll start with Kim. How do people get hold of you? And is there anything that you want to quickly plug, Kim?
I would love to. You can get a hold of me at howtobuildanonlinecourse.com. It's been crazy right now. I'm doing new product launches, so please get on the list if you're interested in building online courses. And I'm also in the process of launching a podcast interviewing people who've built online courses. So if you've done that or want to be on that cast, please contact me through howtobuildanonlinecourse.com.
Oh,
thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Kim. What about you, Sally? How do people get hold of you? And you got anything you want to plug?
I don't think I have anything to plug offhand, except that my meetup is always looking for good speakers, and we have successfully had people give presentations remotely. So if you have a talk that you're practicing for a WordCamp or something, just ping me and tell me about it, and we'll see what we can do. You can find me at WPFangirl.com, and my Twitter handle is @SallyGetch.
Oh, great. What about you, David? How do people get hold of you? And you got anything you want to plug?
My Twitter handle is @DavidLaieta. That's definitely the easiest way to reach me. And I do have something to plug. I started a newsletter for all the things I find interesting, open source software, free speech online, digital rights, things like that. So not entirely WordPress, but it intersects well with the WordPress community. That can be found at thisweekinweb.com. goes out every Friday. So if you catch this tonight and subscribe, then you'll get tomorrow's. If not, all the archives are up there too.
Oh, I'll sign up for that. You always got interesting things to say, Dave. So that should be interesting. Right, John, how do people get hold of you? And you got anything you want to plug?
Sure, I wouldn't mind plugging my Kickstarter. It's got a few days left in it. And you can go check out my Kickstarter for the WP Plugins A to Z podcast at wppluginsatoz.com/Kickstarter. And getting hold of me, one of two ways. Go to my main website, johnoverall.com, or find me at wppluginsatoz.com.
Yeah, why do your Canadian emails end up in my junk folder, Dave?
There might have been too many links in there.
Yeah,
because I've had extra links in all my outgoing emails lately promoting my Kickstarter. So
might be that. He's been trying to get hold of me, and he said, you don't talk to me, and then I found it was all in my junk folder. Well, panelists, thank you so much. I think it's been a great show, and I think we've exhausted almost every aspect of plugins. Would you agree, folks?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jonathan.
Not by a long shot.
Hey, don't go.
Yeah, we could
have some administrative stuff afterward.
Right. We could probably talk about plugins for a week, but people might get tired of listening to us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Jonathan.
Thanks.
Hey, hold on, everybody. After I stop, I'll start broadcasting. You ready to finish up, Jonathan?
Yes. Well, I'd just like to say thank you so much to our ladies, Sally, Kim, to our great panelist, David, and to our guest, John, the A to Z, the master of the plugins, the Dragon Master.
Yep.
See you later.
So does that mean we're not great panelists if we're ladies?
You
go over to Timelines episode 190 and listen to Jonathan's interview today. It was this morning, and it's up on iTunes tonight. It's already up.
Yeah, cool.
So, hey,
we're the best panelists, Sally.
That's right.
So, Sally, where are your meetups physically?
At a place called Tech Liminal in Oakland, California.
Okay.
On Sunday afternoons.
Where to go, but I didn't know where you physically were.
Yes.
Yeah, she's a great lady. Yeah. Right then. So, any words of wisdom, my beloved co-host, the Wizard?
Yeah, I do. You know, we're still on a little bit, but let's talk about some of the new technology that's starting to hit. We had one viewer. I didn't put this in any of my websites. You know, you can put it so you can see it. There's a lot of other stuff streaming right now, but we had one viewer. But if we were on Blab, you know, in the smaller groups, we'd have a lot more folks watching. You know, coming through. But we're doing Saturday mornings now.
Is this because people are randomly looking at Blab, or does it have to do with how many followers you have?
I don't know. I've got 700 followers, so.
I think it's a little bit of both, Sally. I launched a new Blab show last Friday, and I started getting some people coming in, but then the woman that I wanted to interview, I brought her in, and she had more followers. All of a sudden, I had 59 people in the room.
Yeah. It's by name. If you get a big name, you're going to have a lot of folks, too. Some real big names came up this week for the very first time on Blab, so it's starting to grow.
Tony Robbins showed up there.
Yeah, Tony Robbins was yesterday for the very first time. That's the first time he was ever on Blab.
Oh, I didn't see that. I guess he had some followers.
Yeah, you know what? He actually got 1,200 some odd coming through and about 200 on at one time.
Yeah.
But we do a thing called on Sunday nights called Meet the Voter, and we've had up to 3,700 in politics come in.
Politics is always entertaining.
So, but it hooks into my other show.
Bill's version of politics.
Yeah.
It's Sunday night. Come and check it out. 6 o'clock Pacific.
I'll have to go watch it just to catch up on American politics.
I heard, Bill, you got some British commie socialist that goes on there.
Isn't that you, Jonathan?
I don't know.
Jonathan's going to moderate second period. We do 3 periods. Moderate second period. Hey, but no, that said, on Saturday mornings, I do a podcast every morning except for Sunday, and that's in the night. We're moving WP-Tonic to Saturday mornings, so you're always welcome to come on. It starts at 9 o'clock, and it's going to be a joint venture with Timelines, and we'll be interviewing people, too, and doing joint Timelines and WP. Jonathan will still overall produce it. But a lot of you guys haven't been on Timelines yet. I know, Sally, you haven't. John, you haven't. So there'll only a lot, 2 of you. So you need to come up and we'll do an interview. And then the other thing, too, is after the show for about a half hour, 45 minutes, I'd like to critique some random WordPress pages and just look at them, what makes them good, bad, to make money. and then what will happen is other people will ask you to critique their pages. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun, and it's growing
do we
pretty
get
well.
to actually look at their code?
Oh, yeah.
No. I guess you could. You could open it up on the side.
Whatever you like, if you want to really embarrass them.
You could pull it up on the side of their code.
Right, because it's there's stuff that looks pretty, but it's actually built really badly.
Well, John looked at some of my code and he started crying on camera. So that was he was his normal, charming self, wasn't he, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, you made some good suggestions. Because you look at stuff for so long, in the end, you can't see the problems anymore. That's my excuse.
And also, there's Josh Miller who has a SaaS product up in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and he is really heavily into developing schools like you are for learning management systems. But he's created a platform. He brings 10 people in at a time at $1,000 a pop. That's why I thought, Sally, Kim, you might want to get in contact with him. He's got a pretty impressive looking page. He's going to move to a freemium model. And I think a lot of people are forking right now LMS systems because a lot look the same. There's a ton of them starting to pop up.
It's going crazy right now. I really appreciate you guys sharing this one with me, but I'm getting like a brand new one every day. I predicted last year, because I teach how to build online courses, right? I predicted 2016 was going to be the year of the online course.
It is.
And in the last 30 days, I cannot tell you how many links I get from people like, this one just showed up, this one is showing up, this one. It is truly going to be crazy.
Right. Well, Lifter came out last year sometime, or maybe the end of the year before that. I've installed it and still not really had a chance to take a good look at it, but it has come with an accompanying podcast and some other good things. You start to think that people must be selling online courses as the next get rich quick model, which is hilarious, because if you've ever tried to design a course on or offline, it's really hard work.
It's really hard work.
Yeah,
I taught WordPress courses.
And that's what I teach. I teach people how to build courses because I've been doing it for over 20 years, but it is not a get-rich-quick scheme, and that's why I teach it the way I teach it, and that's why the new podcast that I'm launching is interviewing people that have done it. And yes, some of these guys are guys that launched at over $100,000, but that is not the norm, and none of it is unfortunately, what we're in that place right now where the internet marketers have grabbed it, and it's like, spend 2 hours, throw up a course, you're going to make $70,000, and that is just not true.
No.
Like John Lee Dumas sort of made.
I thought you promised me you were never
John actually does good work. John does.
Knows John.
I thought you were going to promise me you were never going to mention.
I know John.
In front of me.
He started though with six YouTubes, not YouTube, but 6 videos up on his first shot for $200.
But he did. But he built.
I never know you are. You get to the backside. I'm in a different one, but I know.
Oh yeah, I'd like to tell the panelists our next guest in February will be Uncle Tucker, the presenter of WP Water Cooler, will be joining us.
Jonathan and Town, just a thought. What if we put this? If you
call
go
him
over
Uncle
to
Tucker now, he doesn't mind it, but there we go.
Listen, we look over at meetthevoter.com, and see how I've lined up the next show. What if we put up a show where we cycled people in and out and didn't have a full panel? You had 4 people up at a time. And then had 2 separate, and then cycle people in.
Jonathan's going to have to really change the way he does this, though, because he asks pretty much everybody to answer every question.
Yes, I do. I'm very
Sally's
polite.
right with that.
I'm very polite, aren't I, Sally?
And yes, no, we don't have to hear every single person on every single question, but you would be cycling continuously and chaotically.
No.
If you're trying to move
the first period,
people through.
maybe have 2 different episodes, about 45 minutes.
I do love my co-hosts, my panelists. He always asks me this before he puts it to you. But there we go.
We've been talking about this. We're going to Saturday morning on the other, and also the time. Thursday night. Is there a better time?
We're
West Coast.
I'm always ahead of you.
Sorry, what's that?
So I'm always ahead of all of you. So
I know you're not.
In many ways, Dave.
Oh yeah, we're past my bedtime, so I'm just making it work.
Yeah, I think we what I'm going to email you individually. We were looking at maybe move it to Saturday, but still use Google Hangout for the reasons that Sally pointed out.
But look at what look at what's happening twice now on the other platform. The numbers I'm getting compared to the numbers here. I mean, we're getting okay numbers on. We're getting good numbers on the podcast still.
But Bill, there we go, Bill. Bill's a numbers man.
But I think it does change I agree with Sally, though. It can be done, but it is going to change the vibe of the show if it's just 4 people and cycling it in and out. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but it's just something to...
Right, and you want to think also about how is that going to...
How about if we try a test show on Saturday morning? I'll set it up. As far
as Saturday morning, I mean, this is once a month. I'll make it. I can make most, but remember, I also teach my live classes on Saturday, so If this is once a month, I'll make it, but I couldn't do it like every week.
Yeah, if you got Saturday, doesn't have Saturdays out for you?
I think we'll keep it on Thursdays. But I actually predict I'll be very surprised if Blab don't increase the amount of actual people that can enter the room live. I think I'll be very surprised in the coming months.
Right. I mean, it's if we're going to bring the audience members into the discussion.
For God's sake, Sally! What a horrible idea! I
think that's one.
I feel ill now.
I think that's one of the things that Blab is good for. But the thing is, Carrie Dills puts out a podcast every week, and she does it as a live show that people submit questions to, which is great for the people who are available to commit questions. I only ever download the audio recording afterwards because I do not have time to watch video for an hour in the middle of my flippin' workday.
No, Bill's, you're a great person, Bill, but you've become obsessed by the Blab, haven't you, Bill? You've become blabified.
Well, Jonathan, we almost moved everything to Blab except for this.
And he was right. I
remember
the first day you rang me up and he said, this is this thing called Blab. And I said, Blab? And,
it's been very useful for me for the last 30 days.
Right,
you know what? I'm able to do a daily podcast and get it up that day. I couldn't do it without Blab. Record it, edit it.
But Jonathan, do you, and this is just a question for my own podcast because I'm doing Skype interviews.
Yeah, see you, John.
Do you have issues with the lack of...
Full code.
Jonathan, do you have issues? I mean, not Jonathan, excuse me. Bill, do you have issues with the fact that the audio quality is not as good as you can get with other...
On Blab?
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting pretty good quality. I'm getting really good quality. I know how to work. I use Adobe Audition to work my sound. I only apply 2 effects to it.
I think we lost Dave.
So what,
I think
do you
we were boring him so much.
Download what Blab sends you, or do you do something separate?
No. What you do is Blab will send you. I'll put it right up into YouTube. I've tested this. They shoot it up to YouTube. I've taken it back down from YouTube and listened to the sound. It's not bad because both Blab and YouTube do things to the sound. They put like levelator systems on it. All I do is when I get a Blab, if there's any problems, I run it through I run it through a correction monitor in Adobe Audition. And I had like 175 corrections on John's this morning. It points them out, a click or a sound. Then I can run it through an automatic fix, and then I just put -3 dB, and that's it. It levels the sound, and it's pretty good.
I say
and you're going to put this in the class that you owe us, right?
I'm working on it. Actually, I got a new domain, John. It's called blabschool.com, and I got a $5 school. I thought I'd make a really short, simple course.
Are you sure you
I'm mean to Bill. Are you up to 100 domain names now, Bill?
Not that many, probably 50.
Really? You only got 50? I think I got 140.
John's got worse.
Hopefully, I got 140 domains.
Actually, Kim, have you thought about using Zoom? Because
I've used Zoom.
I do use Zoom, Jonathan.
With the lower paid version, don't you get the record functionality?
I do. Yeah, I do use Zoom for my video recording, and I like it.
Yeah,
I was
I've
just
used
asking
Zoom for podcasts.
Bill that because he always talks about Blab, and yet some of the audio files I know don't think that the Blab recordings are good enough, so I'm just trying to flesh it out.
Well, I've used Zoom. I've actually made a podcast with Zoom. It comes out fine.
Yeah.
Go. And the best, though, is generally Skype with a plug-in, call recorder, and Skype if you want the best video. audio.
I was doing Skype with Ecamm today, and I got a pretty good recording.
Ecamm, yeah.
Yeah.
But
We weren't doing video. We were just doing the audio. I turned off the video and just did the audio, but I got a pretty good recording.
Yeah. But you've got to look at...
John, my beloved John, has it been okay? It wasn't too dramatic, was it?
Oh, no, this is nothing, man.
John
This
is
was nothing.
great. I was so happy to have you on here. You were great.
But
this was fun.
We would have probably had tonight on this show, if we did it in Block,
he's back
probably
to
100 to
Blab.
200 people come through.
He's
and
back
a
to
bunch of them would
his
have tweeted
Blab,
it.
folks. He's like a dog with a
But
bone.
a lot of people it would be up on YouTube all over the place. And it would be
I did tweet this out.
Bye, Bill. I'll see you later, Bill. I'm going off to join Uncle Tucker and Brenda on Blab. And have a discussion there, Uncle Bill. And get some treatment for that Blab disease, Bill.
Funny thing is I'm seeing a lot of my favorite podcasters are starting to appear on Blab. It's
I've been way ahead of the power curve on Blab, John. We're still up. But I was way ahead. I was one of the early Blab adopters, put it on the podcast. And the initial podcast was like Dave Jackson. All these guys hated it. Said, you know why they hate it? Because it makes it too easy to create a podcast.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to create a podcast now with a Blab if you know just a couple techniques. And I tell people before you can go to a podcast.
I don't know that would be the only reason people hate it, because not everybody is.
Sally, do you have a podcast? You know people have it. I know the people.
I know lots of people who have podcasts. No, I was always too smart to try to start my own podcast. That's a massive investment of time.
Teachers were putting all this out. All the teachers were like pounding it.
Sally, you would have a good podcast.
I might have a good podcast, but I need to make a living.
I get that, yeah.
And in addition to that, I have to spend entirely too many hours of my life schlepping my husband back and forth to the airport. So
you could do a podcast once a week pretty easily. It's not too hard.
I used my podcast to increase my business. That's how I got my business off the ground. Was when I started my podcast.
Well, a lot of people have done that. At this point, I already hardly have time for my clients.
Yeah.
Well, that's my problem now.
Yeah.
That's where I've been trying to make a choice between my podcast and my clients, and that's why I started the Kickstarter, was to see if I actually had the fan base to make the podcast full time. And it doesn't look like it's going to succeed, so I'll put the podcast back off way into the back burner and then focus on my clients.
Yeah.
So
unless you're tying into like a school, like I'm trying to do, a school you could tie into some monetary sources, do some advertising and local. And my target is politicians.
Talk about things that are not a get rich quick scheme. This was all the people who jumped into podcasting in 2007 jumped out again pretty quickly when they realized, oh heck, podcasting, consistently over time. It's really a lot of work. This is not going to be a get-rich-quick.
I figure 70% of the podcasts created in the last year will be pod-faded within the next 6 months.
Absolutely.
1,000 a week are being created. What I would suggest somebody to do is create a 7 to 9 podcasts that sort of tell a story about your business, and then maybe once a year create a new set and just do them January through February, and then leave them up for evergreen. And just tell a story. This is how you start, and bring in a couple people. And these are some of the things that you can do with WordPress. And you can have one episode on, building a school or platform, and then just leave them up. Cost you $5 a month if you use Libsyn, and that'll give you a boost. The idea is to use it as a benefit, not you don't make.
If you have 9 episodes in total, you don't need to use Libsyn.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% correct. What would you put on Amazon S3?
The Begin I podcast at this point has 400 and I can't remember exactly 40 some podcasts, and we actually have them all on the web host, and they get a respectable number of downloads. Yeah. But seriously, if you only have a handful of audio files, even if even if you get a lot of downloads over time, putting them on your web host is not an issue. If you have a lot of listeners or a lot of files or big files, you want media hosting of some kind. And most of the people I know use either Libsyn or Blueberry for their podcast hosting, because Amazon is not so cheap when you're talking about lots of downloads and streaming.
Amazon gets expensive.
Right.
Real fast.
Amazon is super cheap for storage, but it's expensive for bandwidth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
And
looking
when
at
you're
it. I know
talking a
it is.
podcast,
I'm gonna put it there.
podcast that starts getting downloads, yeah, you could pump up your cost to Amazon real fast.
Yeah, you don't
Right,
want to
right.
do that. It's a bad idea. in retrospect.
Right. Whereas as you can store tons of backups on there, and it's going to be cheap. Right.
Hey, Kim, before you go, let me give you this guy's name. I think he'd be a good interview for you. Josh Millage. I'm going to interview him, I think. He's from San Francisco. But here's what he's done.
Excuse me, I have a cat problem here.
Hello, kitty.
Can you dash
Pet the kitty.
Yeah,
Bob?
Pebbles, say hi.
Hi, Pebbles.
You know how I think he's making money? He's created this SaaS product with a plugin. No, it's a plugin.
Sally
excuse me.
just gave me his name a few minutes ago, as did Jonathan. So I'm going to look him up.
What, Josh Miller?
Yeah,
Millage. Yeah.
Millage.
Yeah.
I've got his email. I've got his website right now.
It's Lifter LMS.
I
Yeah,
really
Lifter
appreciate
product.
that.
Yeah, Lifter. You know him?
I don't know him, and I mean,
No,
here's
Sally.
my challenge right now.
I've talked to him some. He gave me an evaluation copy of Lifter, and at some point they may come and do something at our meetup. They had just the last time we covered learning management plugins was like right before they came out, or maybe right after they came out. In any case, I didn't have a chance to include them. So I have looked at a number of these plugins.
He's going to go free next week. He's charging $400 for the plugin this week or something like that. But
Wow.
next week it's going to be a free plugin, and what he's going to do is change the model, where he still was charging like $300 or $400 if you wanted the Infusionsoft link.
Oh well, Infusionsoft is insane. That's money for Infusionsoft.
Yeah.
They charge everybody everything, don't they?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's since I got an evaluation copy of the plugin, I'm not sure how expensive it is, but I didn't recollect that it was really out of line with other things.
Lifter MLS.
LMS.
Yeah, I've got it right here. It's a really simple site. And let's see, buy. I'm looking at it right now. So I'm going to probably go, that's $149 a year for one site.
Yeah, $149 a year. It's not horrible. But
That's going to be free
I'll
next
have to look
week,
at what
though.
it offers. I've been teaching 4 of them for the last 18 months, and I keep getting thrown new ones every week. What I'm doing right now is I'm kind of doing a high-level overview of each one on my blog posts, about 1,500 words, and then of course when I teach, I go into deeper downloads into what you have options for. So that's not horrible. Sensei, which is your Woo themes, is going to cost you that every year if you want to keep up with it. It's not a software as a service; it's just the plugin. Most of them are going to be between $99 and a couple $100 a year if you want to keep up with the licenses. So.
Yeah. Well, what he's going to do is going to go freemium next week on this, so it's not going to be $149. And then like I said, he's going to charge for the add-ons. That's his new model. Another way he makes money too, he's aggressively going out and trying to teach people LMS, learning management systems. He charges $1,000 because he's got this product right here. He brings as credibility, and then he charges $1,000 a course.
Per person? Per...
He's building a course for $1,000? God, I would never do that.
He teaches learning management systems.
Oh, okay.
To 10 people at a time for $1,000 a pop. And then he has a process even you go through to have to qualify to even take his course. I've got a friend of mine who's going to take
He's less expensive than I am. Definitely for that. I charge more than that to teach the full system.
I mean, that's what he's charging right now. So I'm just telling you, it's competition, what he's doing out there.
Well, yeah, I don't believe in competition. I don't worry about it.
So, well, you know what? You study your competition in business to understand what's going on.
Oh, I do. I look at them, but I don't truly believe in competition.
Truth about competition is there's always enough business for everybody.
Well, exactly. And we all have our own traits and our own things and our own audience, My audience isn't going to go to someone else. They're my audience.
No, this is like, they're getting a lot of folks around the Bay Area, I think, and this part of the world. But that, that spreads up. I wondered how old he is.
And I'm sorry, folks, but just because you built software doesn't doesn't mean you know how to teach.
Oh, I know. I agree with what you're saying, but
my background's teaching. You want to build an online course, learn from a teacher.
I'm talking to one guy, so
teaching's hard.
It looks nice, so I appreciate you guys telling me because, like I said, I'm getting a new one every day, and I just put them on my list. They're going to go in my evaluation pile because there's good stuff coming right now. And 2016 really is going to be the year of the online course.
Adobe's got one too. It looks terrible.
Captivate?
Yeah, I thought it was kind of
Captivate's been out for 100 years. That's why it looks terrible.
Yeah, it looks terrible.
Captivate was one of the original ones. It started in the early 90s.
Yeah, it's for corporate design.
Yeah, it was complete. It was back when we all built, back in the day when I built big instructional learning stuff for corporate. Yeah, and some people still do Captivate, but that is not going to catch on with the solopreneur, small business entrepreneur trying to build a class. It's just not going to happen.
It's too expensive.
Yeah,
well, anyway, it's an interesting show tonight. I would promote. They're going to do this once a month. Still, this one. It's kind of late. I'm trying to move all my stuff at 9 o'clock when all possible, except for Sunday night. So
9 o'clock. You're trying to move everything to 9 o'clock on Saturday, right?
No, we're gonna do WP-Tonic and Timelines are gonna do a joint show on Saturday. Well, we did some testing. I did some testing. I drove up Jonathan's numbers and I drove up my numbers by putting up the same show on two different locations with different intros, and then cross talking about both of the shows. I saw the numbers go up.
Mm-hmm.
So we're having some pretty good growth going right now. If you noticed, we've been up as high as 2 when you put the WordPress category in, and it moves around. It's hard.
I'm going to have to do something about that.
Yeah, like you said, I think you need to get more people writing, saying nice things too, and doing rate and review.
I need more reviews, and I think you hit on the one thing is consistency too.
Yeah.
I think
the other thing, I think consistency is really important. In fact, the time of day, if you put it at the exact same time, I think it really helps too.
Yeah.
And we think, Jonathan and I have been doing some research because we know somebody over in the Bay Area. And we think that Google actually just sort of randomly does some of the things that they do. Not Google, but Apple.
I'm certain Apple does some random stuff. I mean, if you look at the listings under WordPress, there's still some pod-faded podcasts that have been faded for like 5 years.
Not the top 150 though. It's interesting to see those. Well, I'll let you guys go. It's good to see you. Hi, Sally. Take care.
Well, this has been interesting. This is my first trip to Google Hangouts.
How's the vaping business doing?
Oh, that's why all the trips to the airport. Stefan's doing quite well with all that now. If he could only get a driving license and a car.
Yeah, it's hard rentals. Like you can use, Uber.
Not in Oakley, you can't.
Oh.
He uses Uber all the time at whatever his destination is.
Yeah.
But there's 2 people driving for Uber in this entire side of the county. So.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been tracking a lot, seeing what Philip Morris is doing and all the different things coming online. Interesting. So
on
the vaping. What's going on in vaping? We actually talked about it a little bit on Meet the Voter. You should come on.
Vaping's interesting. I actually had a vape store here in Victoria for about a year.
Really?
Yeah. As you've noticed throughout the show, you've probably seen me pop up like vapor.
Well, I haven't so much because you're not always in focus, and also because your picture is so diluted on my screen.
Oh.
It's pixelated, but I did notice the vapes.
Yeah.
That is weird. Your picture wasn't bad this morning on Blab.
Google Hangouts isn't doing so well. I also had better light this morning when I had the sun through the window.
Yes, light makes a big difference for that.
Yeah.
My living room lights here are just not that great, and I won't have decent lights till I get my office moved completely home again.
Lights aren't expensive.
Vaping it was good. I had a vape shop for about a year. I ran it for a few months and realized I didn't want to be in retail ever again, and turned it to my daughter. And my daughter couldn't keep it going because her life was too busy, so she closed it down, which is a shame because it's a very good business.
She could probably have sold it.
Well, it saved my life. I started vaping 4 years ago, and now I'm preparing to run a marathon.
All right, good for you.
I was a pack a day plus smoker.
Yeah, well, my husband used to smoke about a pack and a half a day, and he wasn't intending to quit smoking, but that was what happened after a little while.
Well, it worked well. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I just closed the window. Is that how I exit the Hangouts?
Yeah, I can exit. All right.
Yeah, there's a little
Hey, wait.
call
Let's
thing.
say goodbye, and I'll just stop the podcast, stop the recording, and then just...
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye, Jack.
Want to turn your WordPress website into an online speed machine? Go on over to WP-Tonic. They'll set up DigitalOcean websites hosting on solid-state drives. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for WP-Tonic's maintenance packages. WP-Tonic offers some of the very best WordPress maintenance packages on the market. So those who are serious about getting the very best platform for their WordPress sites, make sure you go on over to WP-Tonic.com. We want to thank Share the Oils. Share the Oils, Northern Nevada. We thank you for your support.